okay. And I says, I'm gonna figure this out. So then I really started going low-carb, high-fat diet, and I realized low-carb, high-fat really works. And this was back in 2003. And later on, Dr. Tim Noakes further validated the low-carb, high-fat is really good for you. So then I realized alcohol in a dose-dependent manner is good for your HDL. Now, being in Wisconsin and Upper Michigan, yes, I'm good. And here's a sidebar for all you fine folks in Wausau. Alcohol plus brats plus sauerkraut is good for you, throw away the bun. Honestly, I'm not kidding you, that's true. Because fermented sauerkraut has got vitamin MK7 in it.
Wow.
MK7 is part of the thing that keeps you from getting heart disease. Real good, honest to God, homegrown sausage has got all sorts of MK vitamins in it. So, eat your brats, drink your Kesslers, and have some sauerkraut. Just don't eat the bun. Or the french fries. And okay, so I managed very quickly to get my HDL to 60, and I felt really good about that. Woo! So, and then I can get into all the biochemistry. You gotta keep your B vitamins up when you drink alcohol. If you don't, bad things start to happen, but keep your B vitamins up. And you have what, like B100s here or B150s? Yeah, take 3 or 4 of those a day, that's good for you anyway. So, go ahead.
When you say alcohol, are you talking about maybe vodka and those kinds of alcohol? Are you talking
Yeah.
about wine?
Well, typically you want to stay away from the sweet stuff. So what I typically will do is have just straight ethyl alcohol, like 200 proof stuff, 1 shot in water, glass of water, and add a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice. But, well, Everclear, right. And
Who just said that? I was just thinking the same thing in my mind, Everclear. Ooh.
yeah, honest to God,
Not a red wine.
Run your
red wines
car
aren't,
on it.
any, all of that stuff is good for you within moderation, okay? But the alcohol does boost your system. And your body is designed to process alcohol. In the Krebs citric acid cycle, it's called the alcohol shunt. The alcohol shunt burns up B vitamins. That's why doctors don't recommend you to drink alcohol, because when your B vitamins crash, a bunch of other bad things happen. So if you keep your B vitamins up, booze away. Good. Okay. I'll give you a good example of that. Now, my kids are off in college. So, of course, they're off going to college. So, first day off going to college, I say, oh, this one, Katie, I'll never forget telling her this. Katie, it's time for father and daughter son talk about college. Oh, gee, Dad. So, sit down. Okay. Here's a bottle of B150s. If you go out drinking, take 4 before you go, 6 after, and you won't get a hangover. That was the father and daughter
Take
talk.
B, is that what you're saying?
B150s, that's, or B100s. When you saturate your body with B vitamins, you don't get a hangover.
So you're talking multi-Bs,
Yeah, the multi-B, yeah, right. So,
and not the kind with the additional C and all that.
yeah, you don't need, just a good multi-B.
Straight.
A good multi-B is good for you.
Super.
Read
Read
labels.
labels. You gotta read labels, like I didn't use them.
Yeah, prepping for the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does vitamins. How does it affect your liver?
doesn't. Liver's fine, yep. And now, you've got a good question there. Now, a lot of people will say, this may sound kind of, how did you do all this stuff? I typically got tested 3 to 4 times a year at about, back then, between $1,000 and $1,500 per set of blood tests. So I've got close to $150,000 worth of blood tests on myself in the last, since 2002. So when I order up my old lab tests, I go to like directlabs.com online or something like that. I will spend right now between $2,500 and $4,000 in lab work, because it's called dialing in your body. Now, you folks don't need to go to that extreme, but I'm an engineer, and engineers do that kind of stuff, right? Why? This is my factory, and I don't want to screw my factory up. So my AST and ALT's numbers are fine. But I limit myself an absolute amount of alcohol, absolute, 4 shots, that's it. not more, no more than that. That's, my body is dialed into that. That's it.
4 shots of Everclear, I'd be on the ground.
That's, no, it'd be 2 of those.
Okay.
How
Right.
often? How often?
Daily.
Oh.
We've heard such
Not a
opposite.
raging alcohol, no.
But that's what the biochemistry is, that's what it says, your body, now, if you are Native American ancestry, you gotta watch yourself. That, you don't have the alcohol shunt in there and bad things can happen, so watch out, okay, that's the caveat in that. But anyway, so now I got my HDL up, then there was the big, go ahead.
Do you have an opinion about fatty liver and elevated liver enzymes?
Yeah, primarily that's due primarily to drinking terrible beer and eating too much high fructose corn syrup, typically. High fructose corn syrup is really bad for you. I mean, really bad. And in fact, I rarely will even touch maple syrup, which is fructose.
Yeah.
I just won't touch it. I rarely go near that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and I can get into the beer stuff here too. I got a great story on fatty, well, it's celiac disease / that kind of stuff. I got a good story on that. But no, you don't go near it. It'll give you fatty liver, guaranteed. In fact, that's what I see. You see so many kids today, oh my God. Back in the 60s, and no, back in the 60s, think about it in high school in the 60s. Would any girl back in the 60s look like most girls in high school look today?
No, not close.
Exactly, not even freaking close. And it kind of goes, what changed? The engineers, what changed? So, anyway, but as, you know, I'm evolving through my stuff. Now the big push is LDL, 60 for HDL, 60 for LDL, triglycerides at 60. Well, that all happened about, you probably all heard about the 60, 60, 60 for LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. Well, that started with me and Dr. Bill Davis down in Milwaukee. Because at the time I'm researching this and I finally come to the conclusion that one of the reasons why I cleaned out my left main by 2005 was that, holy cow, I've got on this diet and I've driven down my LDL, I've did this, blah, blah, blah. So that's where the 60, 60, 60 came about. Now the 60 and the triglycerides is right. Triglycerides below 110 is good for you. Triglycerides is a measure of how much junk food you eat. Yeah, so your LDL below 60 and your HDL above 60 and everybody's happy. Well, turns out that turned out to be wrong, flat out wrong. I mean, the 60 and the HDL is right, but the LDL was wrong. Now you go, why is it wrong? Well, as I kept digging and reading and reading and reading and reading, people who have sufficient vitamin D, but not sufficient LDL, get cancer.
Say that once more, sorry.
Sufficient vitamin D, but not sufficient LDL, you get cancer. So if your LDL is below 110, you're gonna get cancer, guaranteed. It's another one of these studies. So it's kind of like, well, now we've got a conundrum. So what changed? I always kept asking myself, what changed, what changed, what changed? So look at my blood work, what changed, what changed, what changed? So the more and more I drilled into this, the more and more I realized that the gut has a big deal to do with all of this stuff. But I just didn't know what. And being an engineer, flow in equals flow out, nutrition in equals nutrition out. So I always kept thinking about, what is my gut doing with what I'm eating? And then I went to Russia to buy a dog. Now, people say, why'd you go to Russia to buy a dog? Went to Russia to buy a dog, got a good deal on the dog. It was a curly coat retriever, it's a long story. So I go to Russia to buy a dog. Well, to go to Russia, this one physician, back then I did listen to doctors somewhat, he said, you need these vaccinations. Yeah, uh-oh. Dummy, it absolutely crashed my system. Now, conventionally, the word is vaccinations are good for you, yada, 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 yada. I get it. But what really is the issue there, if you have a healthy immune system and you give somebody a vaccination, that immune system can and can overreact, and it did in my case. It attacked my thyroid, it basically shut my thyroid down, it shut off my pancreas. So, my heart disease was, my left main was completely clear, the other little pieces were all going away, and within 6 months, the heart disease came back raging. So Bill Davis looks at my scan, Dr. Bill Davis, Wheat Belly fame, Medibook Wheat Belly, and he said, Pat, what in the hell did you do to yourself? I said, I'm an engineer. I'm anal about doing things. I'm doing the same thing all the time. He said, you did something different. Because my heart disease went from virtually non-existent to like 700 or 800 on a calcium score within 6 months, which is unheard of. What the freak happened? And so we looked at my blood work, and my insulin number was like a 45. When it's supposed to be 5. It was 45. My sugar was like 200-300. He says, would you just spend a week on a cruise ship eating pizza? No, I don't eat pizza. Well, I do, but I only eat the topping. So we just sat there and went, oh my God. So the first thing Dr. Davis, God love the guy. I really love the guy. He's a great guy. He says, I'm going to teach you how to be a type 2 diabetic. I said, no, you're not. I'm going to figure this out. He says, you can't. You're a type 2 diabetic. Oh. And I said, okay, I love you. So I proceeded, in all of my readings, I read about something called chelated vanadium. Anybody hear about chelated vanadium? Well, guess what? Chelated vanadium in your cell, you got a cell here. This is the porthole, let's say, for insulin. I'll just abbreviate it I. Turns out, when this porthole gets shut off because of an autoimmune response, thanks to the MMR vaccination that I got, vanadium has the back door. Pretty cool, huh? So that means you can literally fix yourself by taking vanadium. Because turns out vanadyl sulfate is what was used to treat diabetics prior to insulin.
Because vanadium's good for your blood sugar.
Right, precisely. Well, it's a long story, so I started taking chelated vanadium developed by this biochemist in British Columbia. Hard to find, but it worked. So what did I do? Your organs replace themselves every 3 to 5 years. In other words, you have a pancreas. It just doesn't sit there and say, hey, I'm a pancreas. Every year, a portion of that pancreas becomes new pancreas. Every year it just keeps on boogieing along. So if you shut off the demand on your pancreas can repair itself. And then after a couple of years, in theory, you should be able to wean yourself off the vanadium and you should be fine. Well, that's what I did, and that's what happened. My insulin came right back down.
How much did you take?
I forgot the milligrams, but I took 2 a day.
Okay.
Yeah. The first thing it did was turned your stools Kelly green.
Detoxification
Hmm?
because of detox or?
It's kind of a pH reaction with your gut stuff, and you know, you kind of go, now what? Really? You kind of go, oh my God, now what do I gotta do?
Don't look.
Yeah, don't look, you got that right. Oh,
How come
Jesus.
we don't hear about that?
It's lost popularity, because vanadyl sulfite originally when given to diabetics, it helped their diabetes, but it created such a tremendous gut problem, it was not well tolerated. The history behind this was this researcher in British Columbia was doing vanadium research on rats, and he was having the same problem with vanadyl sulfate. So he created a chelated vanadium to make it well tolerated, and it worked fine. So I did that, and I told Davis about it, and he said, wow, what else are you doing? And that got me the nickname from him is, that's my walking, talking lab rat, because he's always experimenting with something.
So when you talk about vaccines, what about all these people that are getting their babies and all this stuff, these vaccines?
Okay, well,
But we better not go down that bunny trail.
well, is this, I will say this about vaccinations. Okay. If you have a genetic predisposition to having a compromised immune system, you probably want to look at vaccinations. Probably want to look at that. It's not a carte blanche in any direction. But here's the thing. In my case, when I had that vaccination, at that time I was taking 16 grams of vitamin C a day. I was taking 20,000 IUs a day, and I was taking 6 grams of lysine a day. I had no meat, and I had no carbs in my diet. You know, cheap carbs like wheat. When I told Davis, I said, wheat will kill you, he said, what? This is before he wrote, a couple years before he wrote his book. I said, wheat will kill you. It's really bad. And I explained all the biochemistry of it. My immune system was sleeping because just before I got that vaccination, I had basically an immune test. And you could see that my C-reactive protein was essentially 0. Everything was basically snoozing. I mean, it was a Mai Tai and a chaise lounge soaking up the sun. My immune system was going, well, hey, this is cool. And all of a sudden, this jibby-jabby of MMR come in there, and my immune system went basically panicked, and it just started attacking stuff. So, you know, now, that's a fact. I got the blood work to prove it. I saw what it did to my body. I know what it did. Now, am I saying don't do it? No, you gotta make that your own decision. But I will say this much. In the engineering world, what's the objective evidence on vaccinations? Give me the objective evidence on vaccinations. The Amish. The Amish do not have vaccinations related issues. They just don't. That's a fact. That's not some concocted story. It's a fact. And so you ask what's different with the Amish. Okay, well, they're out in the woods all the time. Anybody see any YouTube videos by Fasano, the guy who coined celiac disease and all that stuff? Fasano's videos are great. He says when parents come to him with gut issues with their kids, do you know what he prescribes for them? Outdoors.
Dirt,
Get dirt. Dirt.
eat dirt.
Eat dirt, exactly. Well, when I was a kid, we used to go cooning potatoes and eat them right out of the ground. It's good for you. Dogs look you in the face, it's all good for you. You know this Purell stuff you put in your hands? Get rid of it. It'll kill you. So anyway, first of all, they're dirty, which is good. Dirt's good. Didn't kill our parents, didn't kill our grandparents. Okay, that's one really, really important thing that's objective evidence. And unfortunately, the American Medical Association just cannot bring itself to say, wow, that's different. And they just can't say why. They just don't. So during my vaccination experience, and then my heart disease came back, I ended up getting to know a couple of guys that used to work at the CDC. And I told them what I'd been doing, and they said, my God, you were taking enough vitamin C, you couldn't have gotten polio if your life depended on it, or TB. He said, whatever you're taking will kill anything. And he said, that pretty much explains what happened to you. In fact, one of the guys had a website called vaccines.net, and he's since disappeared, I don't know where he's gone to, but him and I had some really good conversations about vaccinations and diet and all that stuff. And one of his arguments that he pointed out to me, he says, your vitamin C levels are approaching that which you find in apes. You think about it. Apes don't have problems, do they? Well, what's different, right? What is their blood chemistry? How is their blood chemistry different than our blood chemistry? Granted, they got another chromosome, but be that as it may. What's the blood chemistry? What's the basics? They make their own vitamin C. Yeah, a couple of the species don't, but, you know, I think, fruit bats don't do it, and hedgehogs or some frickin' thing like that, I don't know. Anyway. So everybody else, you know, did you ever see a dog with, well, a wild dog, did you ever see, well, you probably didn't, never seen a lot of wild dogs, but anyway, if you happen to shoot a coyote, coyotes don't have tooth decay. They don't have plaque buildup on their teeth. Why? What do you think?
Because they eat
They're chomping
raw
on the
meat
bone.
and, yeah, chewing on bones and
Even better than that.
they don't
Come on,
eat sugar.
come on.
They don't eat sugar.
No
Right,
cookies.
that's good, keep going, keep going.
Make their own vitamin C?
Bingo!
Yeah.
Where does the vitamin C go? Your saliva? What do you got in your teeth? Pores? Vitamin C get in the pores. Do you ever see dogs eat poop? Why do they do that? Get vitamin K. They reingest the K into their system, and the system comes back to K deficient when they eat their own poop. So in my travels and all of this happy stuff, I started to hear about vitamin K from a Mercola post, Dr. Mercola. And I'm going, what do we got here? So I started looking and digging and digging and digging and digging. And then I see a study from Ames, Iowa State, about cardiac disease in monkeys. Big problem. Guess how they cured it? K1 in the diet. So I called the vice president of research and development at Purina, and I said, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I think I said Galowegius. And I says, I'm doing this research on rhesus monkeys, and I'm concerned about heart disease because it's been a trial, and I want to make sure that I have sufficient K in my monkey chow that I'm buying. This has been a hell of a ride, I'm telling you. Like I said, it's a Vonnegut novel for sure. So he said, oh yes, we have sufficient K in there, you will not get heart disease in your monkeys. I'm going, my. And that's when I really started drilling down. And the more I drilled down, the more I realized that your gut bacteria make, as an example in K, make the K that you need for your body. Now I can get into all that now how I kind of sleuthed all this out. That was about 2008, 2009, 2010. I still didn't quite have the handle on things that I wanted. My calcium score was now up to 1,000, which ain't good. And it was progressing at about 100 points per year. I had it repressed, but not stopped. So I went from the penthouse to the outhouse thanks to that vaccination, and I couldn't turn it around. I didn't know how, didn't know why. I had suspicions, but back then you couldn't even get a stool test to see what kind of bacteria you had in your gut. Couldn't do it. It was pretty tough to do and unbelievably expensive. So now you're going, okay, what do I gotta do? So I locked myself in my house for a week. And I went back over all of my blood tests going back to 2002. And I spent close to 120 man hours in 7 days, just reading and double checking my double checks. Because I missed something. So by accident, 4 years earlier, I had gotten a vitamin K1 test. And Mercola had referenced K1, and I didn't really know that part of it because you just don't hear about vitamin K. You just don't. I suspected something after that talking to the guy about the monkeys, but I'm going, really? Because there was no literature about it. You just couldn't find anything. So I'm going, okay, we know it's partially due to your thyroid, we know that. We know it has to do with magnesium, we know it has to do with D, we know it has to do with carbs, we know it has to do with C, so it's a multi-headed dragon, this heart disease thing. Okay, so what did I miss? So I see this K1, I'm going, let me take a look. Okay, K1, oh, that's low, my. So then, I started looking at K, K1 is phylloquinone, and its other forms are called menaquinones. And it just so happened, about that time, the researchers in Japan and the researchers in Holland posted their K research. Along that same damn week, I started digging. And it was like getting free Packer tickets to the 50-yard line on the Packer side of the field, one row back. I mean, holy cow, I got him went to heaven, you know? This is just too cool. So I started reading and reading and reading and reading, and I went, yes, that's it. So now I had to kind of like be like a collie cartel. Now I had to score some vitamin K. Oh, good God, that was the experience. So I went to Supply Side West, which is where they, this big vitamin show in Las Vegas, which is an oxymoron in itself. So I said, hey man, I'm looking for some MK for you. I'd like to score a key. Oh my God, I'm so naive. So these people are looking at me like, you want what? You want to do what with this? Hey, man, you know. So I got my K1, I got my MK4. MK4 stuff came from Japan based on the research from Dr. Sato. We're mentioning him and our good friends now. And MK4 keeps you from getting osteoporosis. Yeah, and I'll get into all this. This is kind of funny how I got to this point. So then I had to score some MK4. If you want to buy it, it's $6,000 a kilogram. That's some good stuff, man. Now, if you wanted to, and the other active form of menaquinones, MK7, that's the active form that's for heart disease. MK7 is, if you had to buy it in pure form, which you really can't, but if you had to compare one to the other, it's $38,000 a kilogram.
Oh.
Where does it come from? That's some graders.
Oh, this little bathtub just north of Columbia, you know, it's up in the Peruvian mountains, you know. It comes down with the same mule that Wanville does with the, you know. But yeah, it's a fermented product. It's a whole other story. But anyway, the K1 comes from extracts from broccoli, carbon dioxide extracts from broccoli. So I had all my blood work. I told Davis what I was going to do, and I said, if this is right, when I take this stuff, my LDL and HDL will immediately, my HDL will go to about 70, my LDL will go between 110 and 170. And Davis says, it's at 60 right now. I says, it's going to go there. It's going to go there immediately if I don't change anything but just add this. And my triglycerides will come down slightly. And my particle diameters and all this other happy stuff associated with LDLs and HDLs and stuff will change. He said, really? I said, yeah, really. And I says, and my heart disease will stop and reverse. How long will that take? I said, 3 to 6 months. And he goes, really? I said, yeah, that's theory. We're gonna see, here we go. So I did, started taking it. And the first thing I found, within 3 days of taking it, my whole body changed. My whole body just changed. Being an athlete, I'm pretty dialed into my body went, whoa, what's this? This is pretty cool. So about the same time I started working with Olympic athletes, and I started getting them K. And boy, that made a difference in their performance. And that's a sidebar. It's kind of fun. So I get my blood work. Let's see, I started taking it in November of 2010. January of 2011, I got my blood work done. Gave it about 2 months to get it all kind of moving around. And my HDL was 70, my LDL was 159, and my triglycerides were like 105. And I had not changed anything else other than added that. Gave it back to Davis, and Davis said, wow, why? I says, well, that's the next question. What changed? Why did my body react to this way? So 6 months later, had my next heart scan over at Bellin in Green Bay, and I stopped and reversed my heart disease 10%. And it's been reversing ever since. Pretty cool, huh? And myself, I've had 26 heart scans. He says, yeah, Davis says, you're probably the most heart scanned human being in North America. And you know what he said to me? He says, you know, that radiation can be dangerous. I said, good God, I'm gonna die anyway. And I said, besides, I'm taking enough antioxidants, the radiation ain't gonna matter anyway. He says, how do you know? I said, radiation generates peroxides, and if you take antioxidants, you bind up the peroxides, bind up the peroxides, it's no big deal, it doesn't damage the other cells.
What kind of banner?
And he went, oh,
Antioxidants.
yeah, that's how that
Oh,
works.
your seeds.
So did you end up taking the K1 only, or did you do this MK4?
I took all three, K1, MK4, and K7 all at the same time. I just decided to kick over the hornet's nest and just go right,
How
go
much
right
did
after
you
it.
have to ingest on that?
Hmm?
How much did you ingest?
1 milligram of MK7, 50 milligrams of MK4, and 5 milligrams of K1. No. That's when things started to turn around, and I said, wow, I think I got something here. So, to make a long story short, in June of 2011, I went to a vitamin K conference. And it's held every 5 to 7 years of all the top vitamin K researchers in the world. And this time it was in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I signed up for it, Dr. Galavides. Hey, what? I paid my bill, so what the heck, I'm gonna do that. So I got to meet Sato, Sugars, Vermeers, Suddies, all the top K researchers in the world. And I just spent 5 days picking their brain on how all this stuff works. And I went, cool, this is really neat. Sato from Japan, kind of looks like Yoda from Star Wars. Great guy, I mean, really a nice guy. Personable as hell. And we talked for over 3 hours on osteoporosis. And he explained to me the whole biochemistry of osteoporosis and how it all came about in Japan. Stopping it. And they found that there's one part of Japan that just doesn't have osteoporosis. And he was ordered by the government to figure out why. Turns out it was the MK4 and the MK7 that they had in their fermented food that they ate, coupled with magnesium in their diet because they ate a lot of fish, and fish had a lot of magnesium in it. So now in Japan, I've got a very good friend that works in Tokyo, and I said, do you take vitamin K? Oh, MK7 or MK4 all the time. Everybody does. Everybody does. We all take it. It's great. It's good for you. Why don't you take it? Well, I do. Okay. Yeah. It's just common. Boniva, Fosamax, those things are not, it's unknown in Japan. So, anyway, so I learned that from Sato. And he says if you've got somebody, if you got one of your friends with osteoporosis, 75 milligrams of MK4